As we share a yarn today, we honour the stories that have been told on this land for thousands of years and acknowledge the Ngunnawal people as the traditional custodians of the land we're recording on. And we pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging.
Societies are driven by sport. They go there for entertainment and for connection and teamwork and physical fitness and all of that. And so sadly it is an opportunity for people to offend, to find young people that are vulnerable.
Athletes having to go on to the field of play with threats of how a match needs to go, in a particular way, what they need to do, that should they go on and play that game. This is load that we haven't necessarily seen, happen, or we wouldn't have seen happen 10, 15 years ago, play out in the same way.
I think there's something that we can all be doing to role model to our children and to our children's children of what good looks like, and how do you be a good online commentator? How do you be a good online participant?
That's an exciting prospect, to be able to now enable young people to safely and effectively navigate these online worlds that are going to be present, they're going to remain present.
Hello and welcome to Onside and our new series on online safety in sport. I'm Tim Gavel. In this first episode, we're exploring the evolving risk landscape from online abuse and impersonation to the growing impact of AI, deepfakes and risks to children and young athletes. Joining us are two experts with a deep insight into both the causes of harm and how to prevent it. Dr. Emma Kavanagh is a leading researcher in athlete welfare and safe sport, with a particular focus on interpersonal violence and online abuse. Welcome to Onside, Emma.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
We're also joined by Commander Joanne Cameron, who leads the Australian Centre to Counter Child Exploitation, bringing decades of experience in policing, intelligence and protecting vulnerable people from online harm. Thanks for joining us today, Commander.
Thanks very much, Tim. Great to be here.
Together they'll help us unpack what's changing and what sport needs to prepare for and where the biggest risks are emerging from. Emma, can I start with you? From your perspective, what are the key drivers of online harm in sport?
It is such a great question. I think part of where I start with is understanding that online abuse is this overarching concept that has loads of different types of harm underneath that, from coercion, sextortion, doxing, talking about the social commentary that goes on around sport, and that there's so many different people that can be recipients of harm. Direct targets such as athletes, managers, officials themselves, but also fans just watching and consuming sport. And when we take that bigger picture, we then realise there can be a whole range of drivers of harm. And, there's part of sport as an ecosystem, that visibility, the emotion that goes alongside it, to be a follower, to really be within the experience of like an online sporting environment that can drive interactions. But also that feeling of sense of knowing someone online. We follow people. There's a celebrity aspect which makes people feel accessible to us and might lead to comments being made online. But we don't just want to look at abuse within the elite sports sector. It's also thinking about youth sport and pathways and transitioning athletes and interpersonal dynamics. So there are so many reasons that we can see triggers for harm in online environments playing out in the sporting ecosystem.
And Commander Cameron, I guess this is something that your world focuses on as well. What are the emerging threats when it comes to young people?
Yeah, Tim, I'm with you on that ecosystem. First of all, unfortunately, the kind of offending that we see online has come from that kind of offending in the physical world. And a point I'm really conscious of making now is that traditionally we might have said there was physical abuse or physical harm and separately online harm. Those two worlds have absolutely merged. The virtual harm can come from a physical base. The physical harm can come from a virtual interaction. And we all have to understand that this ecosystem is now, in my view, blurred between the virtual and the physical. policing responses haven't always understood that those two environments have blurred. And unfortunately, the traditional criminality, sadly, it's still there exploiting children. It's just that technology and the virtual world are creating whole new ways of offending and creating a whole new ecosystem of harm that we as a whole community need to really understand so that we can respond to it properly.
That's such a good point, that notion of like geographies of space, and are we ever really like offline? Is there a space or reality?
Not anymore. No.
Yeah, I completely agree.
And so your offending unfortunately has gone global. The reach of a fan to their sporting followers or sporting community, it's all around the world, and we need to have a global response to it as well.
Is sport different, do you think, than the rest of a community? Do people feel as though athletes are fair game, especially female athletes?
Well, I think we tend to look at this through that elite level picture. So we might well look at following sport, having an online commentary, being a fan of sport, that visibility, that real-time commentary. So maybe it's unique, but I also think now with that advent and integration of technology, the ease of comment and access and response that can be emotionally driven isn't necessarily unique to a sporting ecosystem. But you mentioned like women and risks to women and girls. They span across different environments, but certainly we see risks to women athletes. So the type of abuse that women athletes receive can be gendered in nature.
Commander Cameron, just having a look at, I guess, this form of exploitation to a certain degree, or online abuse. How does that translate to a sporting sense? Because I'd imagine you're looking at it from a far wider perspective, but from a sporting sense, how does it materialise?
There's definitely an interaction between people, and our focus is on children and young people being exploited. The focus of the Australian Centre to Counter Child Exploitation is in response to online child sexual exploitation, but there's many other forms of exploitation that are occurring, and the harms are as serious as you ever want to imagine what they are. And the sporting communities, sporting organisations, societies are driven by sport. They go there for entertainment and for connection and teamwork and physical fitness and all of that. And so sadly it is an opportunity for people to offend, to find young people that are vulnerable. But the positive side of sport is that it's also the environment that can safeguard, it's the environment that can protect kids, and it's the environment where other trusted adults, other than mum and dad, can send messages of protection, that we're here to keep you safe, and we're here to listen to you if you ever find yourself in a situation where you need to reach out to a trusted adult. So as much as it could be an environment where harm can occur, it's also a great opportunity to build out those protective behaviours, because we are never going to be able to respond solely from a law enforcement angle. There has to always be prevention and protection at the core of the way all of society runs, and I'd say in the way sporting organisations and sporting societies run as well.
I look at some of the early research looking at online abuse in sport, and it really did come from that picture of thinking about elite level athletes who are social media facing, and maybe comments that come in through platforms like Instagram or X. And it's often given us quite a narrow conceptualization of what abuse is and then the risk factors. And I hear you speaking about how we need to have eyes open across the sporting ecosystem, and like considering the vulnerabilities of young people, also the opportunities for protection. So for me, that is so vital to our understanding.
Yeah. It goes to role modelling, doesn't it? I mean, you don't always listen to mum and dad, but you'll follow your favourite sporting guru, or you'll follow your football coach, or you'll follow your badminton team captain or what have you. And that's where I think the role of sport to be that great role model, that protective space. Sadly, some kids come from really vulnerable positions, not through any of their fault at all. Families, groups of people are doing their best, but some kids are vulnerable, They're susceptible. And I think there's a role wherever kids are interacting with their sporting teams or their school sports and things like that. It spreads into education, it spreads into the sporting environment where those trusted adults are there to help kids if they need it, but also role modelling good behaviour.
Yeah.
And I think there's something that we can all be doing to role model to our children and to our children's children of what good looks like and how do you be a good online commentator? How do you be a good online participant?
What are offenders using in terms of technology to get into that young people's space? What sort of things do they do?
There's often a vulnerability. Some kids or, any person can be vulnerable, whether it's they're worried about their image or they're worried about, being not as good as others or what have you. And unfortunately, offenders will often target that vulnerability, build that sense of trust that they're the only person that young kid can rely on. It's really quite manipulative behaviour that can be at play in that grooming environment. To the point that then the kids or the person being exploited is isolated. They're scared of being in trouble, and there's that veil of secrecy wrapped around the victim that they don't seek help, and they think that their person manipulating them or exploiting them are the ones that they should be trusting. I say we need to get out there and have these conversations with kids from the youngest age that you want to have them, so that kids are protective. They're protective of themselves. They know when things don't feel right. They know when something's just not making them feel good. And getting those conversations had, look, honestly, it's a hard topic. It's a very hard topic to be had with your kids. But I say you need to be having those conversations either at home, in the locker room, at school, so that kids can build protective behaviours themselves. But if in the event that they do find themselves in a tricky situation, not feeling comfortable, thinking they might have done something wrong, they need to know adults, anyone, is going to listen to them and not be reactive. A bit of research that we did in 2020 with Parents of Australia. Of those parents surveyed, when asked how would you react if your child admitted that they had shared an intimate image with someone online, 80% of the parents reacted with anger to their own children. Now that's ultimate victim blaming. These kids have been tricked, manipulated, and caught themselves into a situation where they've gone and done something they now regret, and to think that they don't have any trusted adult that they can go to for help, it almost breaks my heart. We as adults need to be there for kids, the sporting coaches, the sporting managers, the teachers, the parents, the adults of the world. We really need to be coming around and helping our kids out, to protect themselves, and two, if they get stuck and they're in trouble, they know who they can go to get some help.
Yeah, and sport could be the one site where we're having those conversations, we're having them early. We see some of the similar patterns then in, adult athletes. There's been a rise in cases of sextortion as an example, and just that feeling of trust, not being embarrassed about that. Who can I reach out to? What would the support structures be in place? Like that feeling of being able to talk about that without judgment or scrutiny. And so being able to really do that at an early age with young people to empower them, both around how to use these spaces safely to keep themselves safe in that environment, but if not, who and where to go to will be powerful, so that we're not
100%.
retrofitting that at a later time.
The issue of gender came up before, and in the space of financial extortion or sextortion, as we call it, the most vulnerable are actually young men, teenage boys, most vulnerable to being manipulated. And the point there is they think they've got this virtual friendship association, someone, she's my mate online. They might think they know who that individual is, and they might be, thinking they're pretty nice and all of that sort of that. These virtual relationships are often fake. They're a complete manipulation by, in some cases, organised crime groups in other countries doing it for financial gain. And there's consequences to some of these victims that are being extorted. It's absolutely tragic.
Looking at can lead to match fixing and match manipulation amongst other things.
Yeah.
Emma, I guess in your world too, you've you've come across people who have a sense of helplessness. You know, I'm in this situation, how do I get out of it?
Yeah, I mean, we're still learning from a point, again, maybe because of a narrow view of what we were talking about, but just that normalization in sport, as an athlete, something that you're going to have to manage. It's part of the process of being an athlete, and that can lead to, just a lack of conversation about, like, should we be normalizing this? And then doing so, what that does for a wide range of harms where we need to be able to reach out. But we know it has a really significant impact on those that are affected. And at the moment, we're not doing enough on that education piece to be able to empower people in these spaces.
Yes. What sort of harm is it doing to an athlete when they encounter online abuse?
And I mean, the harm, it's something that's relatively unique to the individual, of course, and the circumstances. But we know across the literature base that there's a range of harms. They can be psychological or emotional. That can be through impact on their mental health, increased anxiety, thinking about reduced confidence. Lots of outcomes that would be psychological in nature. That I've been doing a lot of work around women athletes and stalking and fixated threat. And this isn't unique to women, but that fear for physical safety as well, and that immediate threat within my environment. Social and relational impacts, the spillover. When we'll be hearing from a panel of people that have lived experience about how that plays out in their relationships and how there can be spillover to others, be that friends, family members, and it not just isolating or having an impact just on one individual. Performance, I think, again, we're here to talk about sport. We know there's a real performance impact. One of the things that got me interested in this topic was traveling as a psychologist with athletes that were suddenly going like, okay, I've nailed my performance. I know what I'm doing technically and tactically. I'm where I want to be. I'm in great physical shape, but I don't know how to deal with the noise anymore, like the additional cognitive load that goes alongside that constant scrutiny. And even we're talking about abuse today, even positive comments about performance or body or athleticism is noise, and that additional noise has a range of consequences for individuals. So wide-ranging impacts that are unique to individuals and situations.
An additional aspect to this, of course, is online gambling too, with disgruntled gamblers really targeting athletes when they've lost money and blaming the athletes for their losses. It can have a really detrimental impact and not just psychological harm, but it can go into the physical as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But we're having better conversations around that. But we know athletes having to go on to the field of play with threats of how a match needs to go, in a particular way, what they need to do, that should they go on and play that game. This is load that we haven't necessarily seen, happen, or we wouldn't have seen happen 10, 15 years ago, play out in the same way. I think the athletes that I'm working with now are competing in a wildly different environment to the one that I did.
Yes, to both of you, if you're a parent, what are the warning signs?
I think it's change in quick change in normal behaviour. Every person's different, has their own sort of rhythm and of how they go about themselves. But really significant changes in heightened levels of secrecy, privacy, unexplained sort of gifts and things like that. Hypersensitivity to wanting to be kept private, things like that. Abnormal behaviours out of an ordinary is something that might be a bit of a flag for carers and parents or educators, sports coaches. It's a little bit difficult to pinpoint that specifically, but I think I go back to the point of having an earlier conversation before anything happens. It's never too early to start having these conversations. To the point of prevention messaging, I'll do a bit of a shout out to a book that the ACE was involved in preparing. It's a bit of a shame I didn't bring it, actually. It's called Jack Changes the Game. And it's actually, you might think it's really difficult to talk to 5 to 8-year-olds in primary school about online child sexual exploitation. Jack Changes the Game is a storybook that does exactly that, and it's a fantastic story. As I said earlier, this is a very difficult topic for most adults to want to have to even think about. We need to think about it because that's what keeps our kids safe. And Jack Changes the Game has gone out to every primary school in Australia. It's far reached to the Philippines even, and we've had it translated into Tagalog. And I think messaging like that, it normalises the need to protect yourself physically. We protect our kids in the playground. We teach our kids how to walk down to the shops and where safe spaces are physically. We teach kids how to cross the road safely. We need to teach kids how to engage online and do it in a way that's safe.
Yeah, and we had been working with psychologists and others within the entourage in sport just to ask that additional question. How are things going online? Like, thinking about time spent online. What are the positive uses? Like just really opening that next step, because often we might look at risks that play out. I think about train in sport, maybe overtraining or changes in body shape or stature. Like thinking about withdrawal from teammates, we might look at those things, but not ask that additional question about how are things going on online.
Yes. Just the identification and reporting at the early stages is so important so it doesn't get out of hand. Do you see people reluctant to report to both of you? That firstly, do you, Emma, do you see that people are not frightened but just slightly embarrassed, or they don't want to report abuse because it draws attention to themselves?
Yeah, definitely. Like initially, like where to go, like who to speak to. And I know that over the next couple of days, we're really be talking about the different options. There's lots of different places, especially in Australia, to be able to go to. But that understanding of who to be able to speak to. I mentioned normalisation as well. That process of this is what it takes. This is another part of what it takes to be successful within sport, and that can start at a very young age as well. And having that language to be able to understand like whether something doesn't feel right and where to go and start those conversations.
Do you find that, Commander Cameron, that people are
reluctant to report?
Yes,
yeah, for
reluctant
sure,
to...
Tim. First of all, kids are scared of that they've done the wrong thing, that it's their fault these things have happened, and also maybe they're worried about what the outcome is. Maybe they're worried that the police are going to get involved, or maybe they're worried that that other person's going to be in trouble or go to jail or what have you. But a lot of the times, kids in particular or victims just want the behaviour to stop. They just want that to stop. That they may be that they don't necessarily want to report it officially to law enforcement. My ask of anyone that thinks they might be a victim of any sort of exploitation is to tell someone so that we can help make it stop. And where that goes, well, that's where the victim can be the one in charge of what their destiny is. There's our e-safety friends they can go to. They can report it to the ACE. They can report it to their local police. They can report it to, any trusted adult, so that we can help that exploitation stop. And then, second, third, and fourth order, issues can be dealt with as and when, whether it goes to, law enforcement and there's a prosecution or not. The other bit I just wanted to touch on too, there's a lot of messaging here for young people, and it's about don't get caught up in these offending circles. We need to be showing kids what good looks like, so that one, they're not victimised. Often some victims are turning themselves then into offenders, and being able to be that role model to young people to show what's an acceptable behaviour and then to show what's not acceptable. We're pretty well versed with respect to things like domestic and family violence about what good looks like. In that sense, there's something there to be done about online behaviour that I think in the physical world we seem to have worked that out. On the online world, it's a free for all. And advice I used to give my kids was whatever you say online, you'd say to your grandmother's face. So that soon changes what people go and type online.
And what that looks like across the sporting ecosystem. So as an athlete, how does that look? As a sports fan, what does that mean to be, to adopt or to be a user in this space that works with that level of care? I mean, I'm navigating this with two very young children now at the moment, and it changes like your perception as a parent now, thinking, how do I prepare them to be able to navigate connected lives?
Yes. Have you worked much with athletes who have encountered online harm, and how do they get out of it? What's the solution there for them?
I mean, yes, it is the answer. I think now, like, such is the landscape, especially in elite sport, that it's really difficult to navigate a career without experiencing some form of online harm. Be that just, as I mentioned, through that constant chatter or noise or public opinion around performance, so it's really difficult to compete now. And even if you don't have a social media account yourself, it doesn't mean that conversation isn't still happening. I'm working with athletes a lot on that preparedness to go into event. And interestingly, I have some players that would be like, look, I don't go near it. If there's one thing I know before I go into a major games, like, I switch everything off. I have someone else managing my account if I can. I've got others where, like, doing a TikTok is like part of their preparation. They're heading into a game, and actually, like, they need that. They want to be able to communicate. There's some real positives. They get motivation from that environment, and so being able to manage that in a team and see, like, how do we have conversations around how we use, who uses in what way, when it's good for you, what point does it start to maybe tip the balance? So opening up those conversations is really unique to the individual, but also really critical.
And it makes it difficult for sporting organisations who are trying to keep things tight as well. And suddenly you've got athletes out there drawing attention to themselves.
Yeah, but there's so many benefits as well. I think, we're talking about abuse today.
Yeah.
Again, I think about the ability to access information, help seeking, like mental health support seeking. There's lots of benefits to lives connected as well that we want to harness, so that it isn't just about, stopping usage or having to control and regulate that to the point that we don't still get those benefits.
And of course, social media has been used to call out abuse.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Or unite voices, or mobilise collective action in a way that is so empowering and powerful as well.
Yes. Just as a final thing, looking at practical steps sporting organisations should be taking now to stay ahead of emerging risks from a junior sport point of view, and I'll go broader to you, Emma, but firstly to you, Commander.
Yeah, I think engaging with those prevention and education materials, they're available to any sporting organisation as much as anyone in the community. Opening the conversation up before anything happens, so that we normalise, if there is an issue that that kids know they've got some trusted adults that they can come to. And I guess for those trusted adults, you've got a bit of a toolkit in your back pocket that you know what to do. That you do actually stop and listen. Back to that reaction I shared with you before in our research, that you moderate your reaction to it to make sure that those kids are feeling heard and safe. Of course, if things are life-threatening or serious harms occurred, the 000's one phone call away to contact police. And there's also, mandatory reporting requirements across our states and territories. If it's online, there's also work that the e-safety colleagues can help with people in terms of taking material down, the like. But it's also for organisations, everywhere, public sector, private sector, and sporting organisations, is about setting expectations of that the safeguarding's designed into your processes and your governance, that the right checks are conducted, working with vulnerable people, and all of those checks and balances. That sort of governance is critical to, preserving the environment of a sport, to keep it safe, and that people aren't attracted to that sport because it's not protective. There are cracks in a system where, sadly, offenders might think that they can get in there to exploit kids. It's a whole of society approach here, and I really appreciate the conversation
Yeah,
today.
and do you know, it's the same. It's exactly the same across that ecosystem. So mapping that, be it elite sport or pathway sport, that broadening of understanding, as I mentioned, that like the fact that we're not just talking about athletes here as well, having these conversations for emerging officials or managers or administrators. So it's that whole ecosystem. We just get to see it play out in sport, and maybe this is the space or platform where we have that visibility to have those conversations that will matter everywhere.
It's interesting too that elite athletes are becoming younger and younger. You have a look at the Olympic Games. We've got young people involved in sports that appeal to the youth, whether it be skateboarding or whatever. So it's coming more into your world a little bit, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I make the observation, of certainly about people my age. I'm not a digital native, so here we are, the adults, trying to teach kids in an environment we ourselves don't even understand.
Yeah. Yeah, and we say the same, across sports teams. Like, I think this is even more prominent if you look at community sports teams. Could have young people where they've never been without technology, and older people that remember time without it. And we've got to find a language that meets in the middle there.
Absolutely.
And that's really that's an exciting prospect to be able to now enable young people to safely and effectively navigate these online worlds that are going to be present. They're going to remain present, and so they should as well.
And it's really important for athletes, people involved in sport, whether they be young or old, knowing that there is somewhere they can go to report it and get action on it too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's really important. Thank you very much for coming in, Emma, and thanks very much, Commander. And it's been great having a chat today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That's Dr. Emma Kavanagh and Commander Joanne Cameron. As we've heard today, the online risk landscape in sport is evolving rapidly, and staying ahead means understanding not just the technology, but the people, behaviours and environments that shape it. For sporting organisations, the challenge is clear. Move from reacting to harm to actively preventing it through education, awareness and strong safeguarding practices. Thanks for listening to Onside. Stay tuned for episode 2 of our online safety in sport podcast series. We will speak with Surfing Australia's National Integrity Manager, Kate McMahon, as well as Sport Integrity Australia's Director of Safeguarding, Lisa Purvis, about the importance of education in creating safer online environments in sport.